This is Mindpiece, a One Piece server that's honestly probably one of the best servers I've played on so far. Not only does it feature like 50 different devil fruits, but there's also 8 different islands, each island boasting their own threats, loot, quests, and of course most importantly, their own boss fight. And I'm gonna spend 100 days in this place. This video is actually sponsored by them, so I appreciate it. Our first island, Fuchsia. Oh, and also because there's no real accurate way to count the days, I'll be counting the hours instead. 100 Minecraft days equals about 33 hours, and I played for about 35. After loading onto the first island, which is Fuchsia, the game takes you through a sort of mini tutorial, taking through all the systems and everything you pretty much need to know while you're here. You also get a free set of beginner armor and some beginner tools, so I immediately got myself kitted out and then headed down to fight my first bandits. In fact, my first mission was to knock out 5 of these guys. We're gonna spend a lot of time defeating and knocking out bandits and pirates, so we better start getting used to this. And then the golden arrow led me to my next quest, which was to farm 32 wheat. And of course this wouldn't be a great experience if I didn't have my own island. I know it looks like a mess right now, but trust me, this is gonna be home sweet home. Nothing that a little elbow grease can't fix. And then I decided to destroy my palm trees. I'm going to regret doing this later. Anyway, my next 2 quests was to mine 10 stone blocks and sell 32 hay bales. Then I figured it would make sense to do some exploring. And by doing that I found the hidden mine, which is exactly what you think it is. It's a mine. And that is not one of the blocks you can mine. Or that one. Anyway, my next quest was to catch 4 fish. So let's catch 4 fish. Then I figured I would do some more exploring, and this place looks insane. Like, the more I explore this place, like, the details that goes into this. But anyway, this time I found the remote beach, which I'm never gonna visit again, so you can forget all about it. Anyway, for my next quest, I had to reach level 3 in one of my jobs. Your jobs include things like farming and mining, so I chose to do the mining. And then for my next quest, I had to knock out a couple more of these bandit guys. Again, there's gonna be a lot of this, so get tucked in. And then for my next quest, I had to break 32 logs. I just wish I had known that the mission wasn't talking about any logs, it was talking about oak logs. So this was a waste of time. Anyway, after the oak log mission was finished, I was back to fighting the bandits again. Except this time my goal was to collect 32 sake bottles from them. Each and every enemy drops a certain type of item that you need to fight the boss of each island. And for this island, I'm gonna need these sake bottles. And don't get it twisted, this took ages. But it was nothing compared to what was coming next. Nothing compared. Then on the 3rd hour after fighting a couple more of these bandits, my next quest was to kill 8 cows. And then I had no choice but to get myself kitted out with diamond armor, cause now it's boss fight time. And my first opponent was Higuma. And I'm pretty sure that there's supposed to be a health bar underneath his name. That's obviously a bug, but because of it I had no clue how much damage I was doing to him. I was panicking, especially when he pulled out his goons. I had no clue I was gonna be fighting Higuma and the squad. I was doing my best to hold my own, but I was pretty sure it was over at this point. Higuma was swinging his sword wildly. I wasn't gonna go near him, but once his goons were knocked out, I had no choice but to face him head on. I destroyed him. First boss fight, done. Thanks to that victory, it was time to move on to the next zone, but first, I need to upgrade myself to the recruit rank. And then it was time to sail to my next location. And that next location is Orange Town. For my first quest this time, I had to fight 5 of Buggy's goons. I'm gonna be fighting a lot of Buggy's goons. They also had a massive HP boost compared to the bandits I was fighting earlier. So it was pretty clear at this point that I'm gonna need to upgrade my sword. Otherwise everything is gonna take 10 times longer than it needs to. And thanks to the fact that my next quest was to open one of the Orange Town crates, I got myself a mini Zoro as a pet. But at this point I couldn't really figure out how to deploy him, so he kind of just sat in my pocket for a while. And then I spent the rest of hour 3 looking for the mini boss. From now on each island is gonna have its own mini bosses. Not quite at the difficulty of the main bosses, but still a lot more difficult than the basic goons. And I had no clue where this guy was supposed to spawn. And then thankfully by the time it hit hour 4 I was able to get my Zoro from inside my pocket out into the real world. And he gives a bunch of stat boosts if you upgrade him, but for now he just gives me 2 extra strength. Anyway, remember the mini boss that I couldn't find in hour 3? I found him right around the corner, literally. But also remember how I said they are much more difficult than the basic goons? Yeah, I learned that the hard way here. That was a pretty embarrassing loss, so I figured it was time to get myself kitted out with some bandit armor, which is actually a lot stronger than diamond armor, so it made a massive difference. Thanks to that, I was finally able to defeat my first mini-boss. And my reward for defeating the first mini-boss? My first devil fruit. So the way that devil fruits work in this server is that you get a fruit of a certain rarity. Then you take that fruit and you basically spin it and you get a random fruit based on the rarity of the fruit that you're holding. And mine was green, which was the lowest rarity. So let's take a guess what kind of fruit I'm gonna get. Gum fruit? Chain fruit? No, the vision fruit, which lets me see my enemies behind walls. That's amazing. That's great. During the next hour, I figured I should do some pirate adventuring. I found a stray island that was separate from the main island, and I figured I might find a treasure chest. The game actually tells you when a treasure chest is gonna spawn out in the wild, so there was no treasure chest here. Anyway, back to fighting Buggy's goons. Anyway, at this point my next quest was to collect a certain amount of apples. That's exactly what I did. And is it just me or the apples way too rare? Because I was only able to finish this quest during hour 6. Later, while fighting some of Buggy's goons, I realized that one of my quests was to win a duel. So I figured I'd challenge this guy. Then he hit me with his copper domain expansion. And then I had to collect 96 buggy balls, or cannonballs. This entire time, I've only collected 1. But the quest next to that was to kill 256 chickens. Where exactly are these chickens? I had no idea. After that, I ran into my third mini-boss fight, which completed one of my quests. But what I did find was a bunch of players all gathered up in one spot. What I didn't realize was that there was about to be a boss fight. And this is insane. This has to be one of my favorite parts about this server. And I got completely destroyed. And then remember how I said it was time to get myself a sword upgrade? That's exactly what I went to do over at the auction house. The only problem is I can't use this katana blade. But I didn't read the text. So I spent all those coins on it, only for it to be completely unusable. I wish I could go back and take this entire moment back. And then during hour 7 I figured I should farm some carrots over at my base. For no actual reason other than I just randomly felt like doing it. But I do have a quest that needs carrots, so not a waste of time. And then I noticed that one of my quests was to eliminate 256 soldiers. So it only made sense for me that I go back to Fuchsia to do this quest. And I don't know if you've noticed, but they're going out pretty quickly. That's because I managed to get myself a new blade just before. And this thing was a huge upgrade. Really makes up for the amount of money I spent on the other blade that I couldn't even use. And of course, after eliminating that many of the bandits, I was able to get myself even more bandit armor. And then I spent the entirety of hour 8 eliminating Buggy's goons. Like I said, there's a lot of this, and there's still a lot more coming. And then for my next quest, I had actually already opened 13 island boxes, so I just had to open 2 more. Then I figured for the rest of my time I should try and make some changes to my own island, i.e. destroy absolutely everything. The place looks like a mess. I also figured I should probably rebuild the palm trees. It just looked way too empty without them. Look, see what I'm talking about? See how much better this looks? And then I constructed a base that I created completely on my own. No help at all. No, I'm kidding. Credit where credit is due. It was a tutorial, so link in the description. And up to this point, inventory management was going terribly. So during hour 10, I turned the top piece of the base into a storage unit. And then I turned pretty much the entire outside into a farm. Why? I don't know, I just felt like doing it. I don't know, it makes it look lived in. Now remember that quest where I had to kill 256 chickens? Well, I figured it would make logical sense to make a chicken coop to raise those chickens and destroy them. But this is not exactly how that works on this server. You'll see what I mean later. Then during hour 11, it was finally time to win that duel that I had to win before. I had to face Cheese Man. I destroyed him. And then for my next achievement, I had to make rabbit stew. That's it, I just had to make a huge amount of rabbit stew. And then it was time to face the big man Buggy himself. Buggy and his goons pinned me down in the corner and just destroyed me. But of course I came back for a rematch. This time he stood no chance. These jump attacks do insane damage. Then this guy dared to challenge me. Even though I don't have a devil fruit that actually helps me in combat, I still managed to destroy him. Never challenge me again. In fact, speaking of not having a devil fruit that actually helps me in combat, because I had so much money from doing those boss fights and all the grinding I'd been doing, I figured I should get myself the chain fruit. I was actually pretty happy with the chain fruit. The only thing I would say is I wish it did a little bit more damage. I feel like it should insta-kill these first bandits, but it doesn't, which is a little bit disappointing, but it's better than the vision vision fruit. Then I spent hour 12 in the AFK zone. You get some rewards for being AFK, so not a waste of time. During hour 13 it hit me. I still have a chicken quest to complete and I have no idea where these chickens are. And then I remembered, there's actually a chicken spawner that you can buy in the shop. But it cost a lot of coins, so I had to spend the entire hour pretty much just completely destroying Buggy's goons. I even had to refight Buggy a couple times to get enough money to buy this thing. The bosses give a boosted amount of coins, so it does help a lot when it comes to all this grinding. Anyway, after a little bit more grinding and a little bit more Buggy fighting, on hour 14, I got myself the chicken spawner. And this is exactly what I was talking about earlier, that's not how the spawners work on this server. The chickens are kept in like a stack, which is good and helpful, but it does make my chicken coop void. And then I spent the entire hour just waiting for these chickens to spawn. And on hour 15, I finally completed the 256 chickens quest. Still pretty disappointed about the chicken coop. Then once again, out of nowhere was boss fight time. And look at the animations for these boss fights. And thankfully I didn't get destroyed 5 seconds into the fight this time. I actually managed to get a couple good hits in. I even managed to use my chain fruit. And thanks to that, I actually managed to get a good amount of gold from this fight. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, this tiny blade that's completely melting through Buggy's goons is incredibly useful because it has looting on it. So it's gonna help a lot with collecting those Buggy balls or cannon balls. And it also does an increased amount of damage to any pirates on Orange Town. But I actually wasn't just grinding for Buggy balls. I was also grinding to make enough money so I could upgrade myself to the next rank and move on to the next island. And the Buggy balls would obviously help because then I could fight Buggy again and that would give me a boost in revenue. And this took ages. It felt like forever while I was playing. And it didn't stop on hour 15, I was still grinding during hour 16. But thanks to fighting Buggy a couple of times and the in-world boss fights that appear too, I was able to make those 1 million coins. Look how hyped I am, because that took way too long. It took way longer than I thought it would. Anyway, thanks to all that, I was able to upgrade myself to pirate rank. And you think hour 17 would call for some celebration? Nope, because the next island I'm headed to is even more grind than the last one. Not in terms of difficulty, but just because it's so RNG based. Seeing this place gives me PTSD from all of this. That place is the restaurant island known as Parati. Anyway, to sum this place up really quickly, it is a lot of fishing. My first quest was to fish for 32 cod. So that's exactly what I did. Now, much like in the other islands how we had to get used to fighting a bunch of goons, here we have to get used to doing a unholy amount of fishing, constantly. In fact, fishing is all I did for the rest of hour 17 after landing on Barati. Thankfully, while fishing, I actually managed to find a fishing rod with some good enchantments on it, so that does help with all the fishing. And then for my next quest, I had to break 128 kelp, which was pretty easy actually. There's not a lot of parameters on how you should do it, you just have to do it. So I made a makeshift kelp pool. Anyway, for my next quest, I had to fish 128 fish or any kind of loot. And then next I had to break a couple of cherry tree logs. And then I pretty much did the same thing I did with the kelp with my bamboo quest. You see, Barati on the surface is actually pretty simple. There's nothing really difficult about any of the quests you're doing. It's just they get very grindy, just because of the RNG nature of fishing. And apparently some fish are as rare as diamonds in this universe. One of my next quests was also to fish 128 special fish. So not just any random fish, but the special fish that are added by the mod. So you see how these fishing missions stack up? They sneak up on you. And then for my next quest, I had to kill a certain amount of squids and a certain amount of glow squids. So of course I bought a squid spawner that I couldn't get to work. I even tried drenching this thing with as much water as possible and it just did not budge. Later I'm gonna find out that buying all these spawners was a waste of my coins, but we'll get there. Another thing I haven't mentioned yet about Barati is the cooking quests. Now these are also incredibly grindy, not because they're actually that difficult to prepare the meals or anything like that, just because of the cost of some of the ingredients. Like, tell me why this rose bush costs 10,000 coins. So to make 5 dishes, I would need to get 50,000 coins. And I need to make more than 5 dishes. But anyway, I figured I'd put some focus onto doing some of the cooking missions now. But another issue with the cooking missions is that while I was preparing the meals, whatever customer that I was trying to feed with that specific meal would end up just not wanting that meal anymore. So it was a huge time consumer. So I figured I would go back to the town center and again, boss fight time. And then I decided to dedicate a little bit of hour 20 to these cooking missions. A lot of hungry mouths to feed, let me tell you. And of course, no one's gonna do these fishing missions for me. And then on hour 21, I figured I didn't want cooking missions looming over my neck, so I figured I would just get them over and done with. And then next was some of the worst fishing quests in any game ever, because these fish are apparently as rare as diamond encrusted gems from the moon. There was 2 types of fish I had to farm. The yellow perch, which was the bane of my existence, and also the shonai fish, which I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. Took me ages to get these fish. Oh, and I also forgot to mention I actually had some crate opening missions as well, and thanks to those crate opening missions, I actually managed to get myself an upgraded fishing rod, which helped a ton, but still, the grind was unimaginable. Oh, and remember that squid quest that I couldn't finish earlier because I couldn't get the spawner to work? Well, it turns out there's actually a command you can use to bring yourself to this location that I assume are meant to help you with those kinds of missions. So getting the spawner was a pretty big waste of time at the end of all of it. And thanks to this place, I was actually able to finish all my mob elimination quests, including both the squid and the glow squid. But I still had the worst fishing quest to finish, and it took ages to do this thing. I think 90% of my time spent in this place was fishing, and it didn't even end by hour 23 either. Anyway, by hour 24 I figured I should use some of the extra funds I have to get myself a new fruit. And take a guess what kind of fruit I got. Take a wild guess. The cube fruit. You know what the cube fruit does? It turns the world around you into cubes. I like how these developers think it's so funny. And then I spent all of hour 25 fishing. No surprise there. Except this time I was fishing to collect some materials so I could fight the boss of this place. And they were pretty rare, so this took ages again. And then on hour 26, fight time. And this thing does not stop attacking. It keeps going constantly. So I had my shield up pretty much the entire time. But luckily it's pretty well balanced because it doesn't take too many hits for you to defeat it. And I thought the grind was finally over, but I forgot that I have to upgrade my rank to go to the next zone, and I needed 2.5 million coins. So of course it only made sense that for all of hour 27 I spent grinding to get all these coins. And then on hour 28 I convinced myself that if I get enough cooked chicken, I could sell all that chicken to get enough coins. I was completely wrong. That was a waste of time. So I had to get back on the grind again. And by hour 29 the grind wasn't over. And my strategy was pretty simple. Grind Buggy's goons, destroy them, get all the coins I can from them, get enough cannonballs to fight Buggy himself, and because he gives way more coins than they do, it kind of balances out the grind a bit. And that's a big kind of. Anyway, just before the end of the hour, I was finally able to upgrade myself to the 2nd rank. And thanks to that I was finally able to make my way to Arabasta. Once again, the grind was only worse. Immediately, I made a vow to myself to not finish every single quest on this island, otherwise I would spend an eternity here. But I also knew that almost every single quest would need me to eliminate as many of these goons as I can, so as soon as I landed, that's exactly what I did. And then I spent the entirety of hour 30 just destroying these guys. And of course unlocking some quests along the way. And then on day 31 I managed to beat one of my mini-boss quests, which needed me to kill a certain amount of mini-bosses. And then I went over to the auction house to get myself a new weapon. And just like the small blade back in Orange Town, this is basically a blade that's fashioned to be used against these enemies. They deal extra damage to them, and it also has more looting than the blade had. So this was a huge help to the grind. In fact, it deals 80% extra damage to the Arabasta pirates. So that's a huge boost in damage. Anyway, I managed to finish some more quests during hour 31, including my scorpion quest, where I had to kill a certain amount of scorpions. And you know what it means when you see all these guys gathered like this. I also forgot to mention that Arabasta actually has a huge new mining area, much bigger than the old mining cave from before. And so of course that means it comes with a bunch of mining missions too, so I did a couple of those. And then I spent all of hour 32 looking for a cactus farm. One of my quests needed me to farm a certain amount of cactus, and I could not find this thing anywhere. But thankfully I had some extra gold for some other quests I did earlier, so I was able to do my golden carrot quest pretty easily. And of course the grind was not over. And then I figured I'd do some exploring in Arabasta, and again, the detail that goes into these places is mind-blowing. I had another crate opening quest, so I figured I'd get that done since I was here anyway. And thanks to all that grinding I was doing, I finally had enough material to make myself one piece of new armor. I figured I'd make the headpiece. Even though it's only one piece, it still made a huge difference to my health. And then by hour 34, thanks to all the grinding I had already done, I was finally able to get another piece of armor, the chest plate. And again, huge boost to my max health. And of course the grind wasn't over. At this point, this process was just getting mind-numbing. But eventually it was time to face the boss of this zone, Crocodile. And I was ready. I was gonna destroy him. But keep in mind, I still don't really have a hugely helpful fruit with me. Sure, I have my chain fruit, but that almost does no damage. It's not really gonna help me against this guy, so my chances were pretty much zero. And it turns out trying again without making any real changes is a bad idea. Thankfully, the next time I tried, I actually had the health fruit with me. So basically what the health fruit does is it makes an area of effect where whatever's alive standing in it will get healed, including the player. But it really wasn't that helpful, because if I use it too close to the boss, then it's gonna heal him too. Alright, the next time I tried, I figured this would be the last time. If I lose, it's over. That's it. And of course, I had to give myself the biggest chance of winning as possible. So this time I brought with me the soul fruit. And basically what the soul fruit does is it takes health from one enemy and gives it to the player, which is much more useful than the healing fruit. But then I found out that I ran out of materials, so I had to go back to grind like crazy. It's always when you think it's over that you just have to spend hours and hours again. And I was pretty nervous for this last fight because I really didn't want to lose this and end the video like that. So I was really trying to beat this guy at this point. Alright, now I would grind to progress to the next zone, but that would make this like a 300-day thing, so there's no way. But I'm not done yet because I really want to test out the gum fruit. And thanks to this guy, I was not only able to test out the gum fruit, but he also gave me a couple keys to spin for some cosmetics. And the gum fruit's actually pretty good. It's a lot like the chain fruit, but it just looks way cooler. And I'm assuming it does more damage, but I'm not exactly sure about that. And then of course I also used some of the cosmetic keys that he gave me as well. Anyway, I think that's gonna call it for this one. I don't want to see another pirate ever again. The grind was crazy. Listen, if you enjoyed the video, I'm inviting you to hit the subscribe button. You never have to, but the invite is always there. And of course, if you watch this far into the video, I really do appreciate it. It does mean a lot to me. And of course, everything you need for the server is all in the description. And as always, stay hopeful. I'll see you in the next video. Until then.